The hall of the Galactic Embassy shimmered with soft lights and moving colors. To Captain Daniel Hayes, it always looked like a place half alive and half artificial. The walls pulsed with faint energy, displaying banners of different alien empires, each one trying to outshine the other. Representatives from dozens of species moved about, scaled diplomats with jeweled eyes, tall insectoid guards, and feathered envoys who spoke in songs instead of words. Daniel had attended many of these, gatherings since Earth joined the Galactic Alliance, but he never felt at home here. To him, the air carried too much weight, as if every glance and every word was part of a game humans barely understood. Still, he stood tall in his navy blue uniform, his sharp eyes scanning the room. He was here to represent Earth, but also to learn. Then he noticed her. At the far end of the hall stood a young woman with pale lavender skin that seemed to glow under the crystal lights. Her long silver hair fell across her shoulders, and her golden eyes looked distant, as if she had been broken by something heavy. She stood alone beside a pillar, her hands clasped tightly as though holding herself together. Daniel saw pain. Not the kind of pain aliens tried to hide behind perfect posture or cold words, but the raw human kind, the kind he recognized instantly. She looked like she wanted to disappear, yet no one else seemed to care. The nobles and envoys walked past her without notice, too concerned with their own discussions of power and trade. Daniel hesitated for a moment. Diplomats were told not to interfere with personal matters, but something inside him refused to walk away. He took a breath and moved toward her. "Excuse me," he said softly. The woman looked up, startled. Her golden eyes widened as if no one had spoken to her in hours. "I couldn't help noticing," Daniel began carefully. "You look troubled. Are you all right?" For a long moment she stared at him, as if trying to understand why a stranger, especially a human, would ask such a question. Then her lips trembled. "You are concerned?" she asked, her voice musical yet shaky. "Yes," Daniel said simply. "I am." She blinked, almost disbelieving. "Most do not ask. They do not care." Daniel gave a small, gentle smile. "Well, I do." Something shifted in her expression. Her guard lowered, just a little. She glanced around to see if anyone was watching before speaking again. "My name is Liara of House Sirat. Or, it was." Her voice broke on the last word. Daniel nodded respectfully. "Liara. I'm Captain Daniel Hayes, Earth Delegation." He tilted his head slightly. "Do you want to talk about it? Sometimes it helps." Her eyes shimmered as though holding back tears. She hesitated, then whispered, "My union. It has ended. My intended left me before the bonding ritual. He cast me aside before my people. I am shamed. My house whispers against me. They call me unworthy." Daniel's chest tightened. In her culture, he knew, marriages were not just personal. They were political, binding entire families in contracts of power. To be rejected in public was a disgrace worse than exile. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice steady. "That must hurt a lot." Liara blinked again, confused by the words. "You acknowledge it?" "Of course. Anyone would feel heartbroken in your place." Her lips parted, as though she wanted to say more but had no language for it. Her people had words, for loyalty, duty, power, but not for heartbreak, not for the ache of being unwanted. Daniel leaned slightly closer, keeping his voice low. "You don't have to face this alone, you know." She stared at him, stunned. Then, for the first time, her shoulders dropped as if she could breathe again. "Why?" she whispered. "Why does a human care? We are not bonded. We are not anything." "Because you're a person," Daniel replied, "and people deserve kindness." Her golden eyes shimmered. She had heard many things about humans since they joined the Alliance, that they were reckless, too emotional, too young to matter. But standing before her, this human showed something she had never known: empathy. For a few moments, silence surrounded them. The noise of the great hall faded into the background, leaving only two souls standing together. Finally, Liara lowered her gaze. You are strange, Captain Hayes. But I do not hate it. Daniel chuckled softly. I'll take that as a compliment. The night carried on, and though Daniel should have moved back to his station, he stayed near Liara. They spoke quietly about simple things at first. The stars visible from her homeworld, the sea winds of Earth, the strangeness of alien foods. Slowly her tension eased. She even smiled once, a faint, delicate curve of her lips that surprised even her. But the peace did not last. A pair of tall alien nobles approached, their robes glistening with jewels. They looked down at Liara with disdain, ignoring Daniel as though he were invisible. Lady Liara, one said coldly, you bring further shame by lingering. Your presence here dishonors House Surratt. Leave before you embarrass us further. Liara flinched, her shoulders curling in. For a moment she looked ready to obey, to vanish like they demanded. But Daniel stepped forward. His voice was calm, but firm. That's enough. She's done nothing wrong. Both nobles turned on him, their faces twisting. Human, one spat. This is not your matter. You will remain silent. Daniel met their gaze without flinching. No, I won't. No one deserves to be treated like that. Liara gasped quietly, staring at him with wide eyes. No one had ever stood between her and her accusers before. The nobles sneered. Your kind does not understand our ways. This woman has failed her role. She is nothing. She's not nothing, Daniel said firmly. His voice carried, drawing the attention of a few nearby envoys. She's worth more than titles and failed rituals. She's a person, and she matters. A tense silence fell. The nobles, unwilling to create a scene, glared one last time before sweeping away with their jeweled robes. Liara stood frozen, her heart racing. She turned to Daniel, her voice shaking. Why would you do that? You risk offense. You risk your own place here. Daniel gave her a gentle look. Because it was right. Her lips parted, but no words came. She felt her chest tighten, though this time not from shame. Something new, fragile and warm, stirred within her. For the first time since her world had collapsed, Liara did not feel alone. Later, as the gathering ended, Liara lingered near Daniel. When others left, she whispered, Thank you, Captain Hayes. I do not know why, but I feel lighter. Daniel smiled softly. Then I'm glad. She looked at him, her golden eyes glowing faintly. Perhaps humans are not what they say. Perhaps you are something else. Daniel chuckled. We're just human. Nothing more, nothing less. But as she watched him walk away, Liara's heart whispered something else. To her, this human was not just another envoy. He was the first person who had seen her not as a tool or a failure, but as a soul. And that was something she would never forget. The next cycle on the embassy station began with the same rhythm as always. Endless meetings, long speeches, and silent political games that Daniel Hayes had grown to dislike. Yet as he walked through the shining corridors, his thoughts kept drifting back to the lavender-skinned woman he had spoken with the night before. Liara. The way she had looked at him, shocked, uncertain, and almost grateful, lingered in his mind. He had seen combat zones where soldiers lost everything, and he had seen refugees left with nothing but sorrow. But the pain in Liara's eyes was different. It was the pain of someone who had been told by her own people that she no longer had value. Daniel could not accept that. He had been warned before that Earth's representatives should avoid personal interference in alien customs. But Daniel had never been the kind of man to look away when someone suffered. Rules mattered, yes, but humanity's spirit mattered more. That was why, later that evening, he found himself walking again through the gardens of the embassy, half hoping and half fearing that Liara would be there. And she was. She sat on a low bench carved from some crystal-like stone, her silver hair falling in soft waves around her face. Her gaze was distant, locked on the fountains that shimmered with alien lights. Daniel hesitated before approaching. He didn't want to intrude, but something told him she might not mind. "Liara," he said gently. Her head turned quickly, surprise flashing in her golden eyes. Then slowly, a small softness appeared in her face. "Captain Hayes," she murmured. "You return." Daniel smiled faintly. "I was walking nearby. Thought I might see you." Liara tilted her head. "Few seek me now. Most avoid." Daniel sat down on the edge of the bench, not too close, but not too far either. "Well, I'm not most." For a long moment, silence stretched between them. The fountains gurgled. The air smelled faintly of sweet alien blossoms. Finally, Liara spoke. "You are strange, human. You look at me as though I am not broken." Daniel leaned back slightly, studying her. "Because you're not broken. Hurt, yes, but not broken." She looked down at her hands, her long fingers twisting together. "In my people's eyes, I am. My union was not only personal, it was political. I was chosen to link my house with another. Now, with the bond shattered, my name is stained." Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "On Earth, we have a saying. The value of a person is not in the titles they carry, but in the choices they make." Liara frowned softly. "Choices. That is a word my people fear. We are born into duties. We live to serve them. What I desire matters little." Daniel shook his head. "I don't believe that. What you desire matters more than they want to admit." Her golden eyes lifted toward him, filled with quiet wonder. "You speak as though I have worth outside my fey." The Galactic Embassy's Grand Council chamber was alive with sound. Voices echoed in dozens of languages, overlapping in a steady hum that never stopped. Holographic banners glowed above each delegation, showing symbols of their worlds. The chamber was designed to inspire unity, but to Daniel Hayes it always felt like a theater of rivalry. He stood with the Earth delegation near the edge of the chamber. His commanding officer, Ambassador Reynolds, spoke with a stern face about trade routes and defense treaties. Daniel's role was simple: stand tall, look professional, and make sure humanity appeared strong but calm. Yet Daniel's attention kept drifting. Across the chamber near the Surat delegation, he saw Liara. She was dressed in her people's ceremonial attire, flowing white robes with silver trim. On the surface, she looked graceful, but Daniel noticed the small details: the way her fingers twisted at the fabric, the tightness in her shoulders, the faint sadness in her golden eyes. She caught his gaze for only a second before looking away. Daniel's heart tightened. In the days since their friendship deepened, he had learned more about her world. Her family's pressure had grown harsher. They warned her to cut ties with him, insisting she needed to rebuild her image quietly. Yet Liara had continued to meet him, unwilling to let go of the one person who treated her as more than a ruined bride. That choice had consequences. Later that evening, in the quieter halls of the embassy, Ambassador Reynolds confronted Daniel. "Captain Hayes," Reynolds said in a low, firm voice, "I've received reports. You've been seen speaking privately with Lady Liara of House Surat. Frequently." Daniel kept his tone even. "Yes, sir. She's been going through a hard time." "I've only offered kindness." Reynolds' eyes narrowed. "Kindness?" "Daniel, this is not a charity mission. Every word, every gesture here is political. Do you understand the risk? The Surat House is powerful. If they see you as interfering in their internal matters, it could damage Earth's reputation." Daniel's jaw tightened. "With respect, sir, I didn't approach her for politics. She needed a friend." Reynolds exhaled sharply. "You're letting emotion guide you. That's dangerous here. I'm ordering you to step back. No more private meetings. No more unnecessary contact. Am I clear?" Daniel saluted stiffly. "Clear, sir." But inside, his thoughts churned. Step back? Leave Liara alone when she needed someone most? His orders were clear, but his conscience rebelled. Meanwhile, Liara faced her own storm. Her uncle, Lord Surat, summoned her to his private chamber within the embassy. His figure loomed tall and severe, his silver crown glinting. "Under the crystal lights, you dishonor us further," he said coldly. First abandoned at the bonding altar, now whispering with a human soldier. "Do you have no sense of shame?" Liara bowed her head, her voice soft. "He is kind to me. He treats me as what?" her uncle snapped. "As his equal? Foolish child. You are not equal to a human. You are Surat. And you are already broken." Liara's hands trembled. She wanted to argue, to defend Daniel, but centuries of cultural weight pressed on her. To speak against her family was unthinkable. Still, deep inside, her spirit resisted. "I will not abandon the only one who sees me," she whispered. Her uncle's eyes burned. "Then you are lost to us. Continue down this path, and you will have no house, no name, only disgrace." The pressure from both sides weighed heavily. That night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars beyond the embassy's dome. His orders were clear, yet his heart replayed Liara's words, her trembling hands, her soft smile when she laughed at his jokes. He couldn't leave her alone, not when everyone else had turned their backs. At the same time, Liara sat in her chamber, staring at her reflection in a polished silver mirror. She saw not a bride or a noble, but a lonely woman caught between duty and her heart. Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. "You matter. To me, you do." She pressed a hand to her chest. She didn't want to lose that. The next day, fate forced their choice. The council chamber erupted in chaos as alarms blared. Hostile raiders, outlaws from the outer systems, had breached the embassy's perimeter. Their ships disabled part of the station's defense grid before boarding parties slipped inside. Panic spread among the delegates. Guards rushed to their posts, shouting orders in different languages. Daniel reacted instantly. "Ambassador, stay behind cover," he barked, pushing Reynolds toward safety. Then his eyes swept the chamber, searching, scanning until they landed on Liara. She stood frozen near the center, surrounded by panicked nobles. The raiders, armored and armed, burst into the chamber, firing stun blasts that sent delegates collapsing. "Liara!" Daniel shouted. She turned, fear flashing in her golden eyes just as a raider lunged toward her. Daniel charged forward. His training kicked in. With one swift motion, he tackled the raider aside, disarming him. He grabbed the weapon, fired, and dropped another attacker before pulling Liara behind cover. "Stay with me," he ordered. Liara's hands clutched his arm, trembling. "Daniel, don't worry, I've got you." For minutes that felt like hours, chaos raged. Human and alien guards fought side by side, driving the raiders back. Daniel shielded Liara, at every turn, refusing to let any harm touch her. Finally, the alarms shifted from urgent to steady. The raiders, realizing reinforcements had arrived, retreated. The chamber fell into stunned silence, broken only by the groans of the injured. Daniel lowered the weapon, his chest heaving. He turned to Liara. "You all right?" She stared at him, wide-eyed, her chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, to his shock, tears glistened in her golden eyes. "You risked yourself for me," she whispered. Daniel gave a tired but steady smile. "Of course I did. You matter." Her heart throbbed with an intensity she couldn't contain. No one in her life, no noble, no family, no suitor, had ever stood for her like this. And in that moment, something within her broke free from the chains of duty. The aftermath was complicated. The council was furious at the attack, but instead of focusing on unity, many nobles whispered about what they had seen: a human soldier shielding a Surat woman, protecting her as though she were precious. The rumors spread faster than ever. To the nobles, it was scandal. To Liara, it was revelation. Later, in the quiet of the embassy gardens, she confronted Daniel. "You should not have done it," she said softly, though her voice shook. "You risked your duty, your life, your future." Daniel shook his head. "I'd do it again, 1,000 times." Liara's golden eyes filled with emotion. She stepped closer, her voice breaking. "Do you not see? This is dangerous. My family will never forgive it. Your people will not approve either. Maybe, Daniel admitted, but I don't care what they think. I care about you. The words struck her like lightning. She gasped softly, her hand rising to her lips. No one had ever spoken such words to her. No one had ever dared to make her the center of their care, their choice. In that moment, Liara's heart whispered the truth she could no longer deny. This human was not just her friend. He was the one she wanted to hold on to, no matter the cost. Thaikern. Embassy felt different after the attack. Guards now patrolled every corridor, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning for danger. Delegates moved with more caution, their conversations hushed. Yet for Daniel Hayes, the change was not only in the halls, it was in his heart. He could not stop replaying the moment he had thrown himself between Liara and danger. The memory of her trembling hands on his arm, her golden eyes filled with tears, stayed with him. He had acted without thinking, but now he understood what his instincts had been telling him all along. She mattered more to him than he had admitted, even to himself. Liara felt the same storm. In the days following the raid, she kept close to her quarters, avoiding public gatherings. But each time she closed her eyes, she saw Daniel's face, the steady determination, the refusal to let harm touch her. No one in her people's long history had done that for her. And though her family's warnings rang loudly in her mind, her heart whispered something stronger. One evening, under the soft glow of the embassy gardens, they met again. The fountains shimmered with pale blue light, and the flowers gave off a faint, sweet fragrance. Daniel had come without his uniform jacket, looking less like an officer and more like a man. Liara wore a simple robe, no jewels, no symbols of House Sirat. For a while they walked in silence. The night air carried a calmness that almost covered the tension inside them. Finally, Liara spoke, her voice soft but trembling. Daniel, why did you save me? Truly, you could have stayed with your own people. You could have obeyed your orders, but you risked everything for me. Daniel stopped walking. He turned toward her, his expression calm but serious. Because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't watch you get hurt. It wasn't about orders. It was about you. Her heart raced. She lowered her gaze, trying to steady her breath. You say such things so easily. Among my people, those words are rare. We do not speak of feelings. We bury them under duty. Maybe that's the problem, Daniel said gently. You've been told your whole life that duty is everything. But what about what you want, Liara? What about your choice? She looked up at him, her golden eyes shimmering in the garden lights. For a moment, her voice failed her. Then, with a deep breath, she spoke the truth she had held inside. I want you. The words slipped out, fragile but unshakable. She pressed a trembling hand to her chest. When you are near, I feel alive again. When you defend me, I feel worth. I do not care for houses or... The day of the trial arrived with heavy silence. The embassy's great council chamber, usually filled with polite greetings and measured debates, had turned into an arena. Long rows of delegates sat on tiered benches, their bright robes shimmering beneath the tall windows. Their eyes were sharp, eager for drama. At the center stood a wide platform of white stone, marked with ancient symbols. Here, disputes were judged, not by strength of arms, but by strength of words and courage of spirit. Yet everyone knew these trials rarely favored outsiders. Tradition was both shield and sword for the powerful houses. Daniel Hayes entered the chamber wearing his soldier's uniform. It was plain compared to the decorated garments of alien nobility, but it carried a quiet dignity. He walked with calm steps, his gaze steady. Though he was alone, he carried himself as though no force could bend him. Liara followed close behind, escorted by guards who treated her more like a prisoner than a noble. She wore no jewels, no symbols of her house. Her silver hair fell loose over her shoulders, and her golden eyes were filled with fear. For him, not for herself. On the far side stood Kalen of House Vera, his posture proud and mocking. His robes gleamed with polished crystal, his voice smooth when he addressed the council. "Honored elders," Kalen began, bowing with practiced grace, "I bring before you this unusual matter. Lady Liara, fallen daughter of Sirat, has abandoned her duty. She now gives her loyalty to an off-world soldier, a human with no house, no name in our history. I claim this is dishonor. I claim her hand, so that her disgrace may be cleansed through proper union." Gasps rippled through the benches. Delegates whispered behind their sleeves. One of the elders, a tall woman with a crown of thin silver wires, lifted her hand. "The human may answer. Speak if you have words." Daniel stepped forward. His voice was firm, clear, and simple. "I'm Daniel Hayes. I'm not here to claim power, wealth, or a house name. I'm here because Liara is not property. She's not a prize to be traded. She's a person with her own will, and she deserves to choose her own future." The chamber erupted. Some scoffed, some laughed openly. A few leaned forward with interest, but most looked scandalized. Kalen smirked. "Spoken like a child who knows nothing of our ways. Elders, hear him. He insults our customs, our very foundation. He would let chaos rule instead of order. What is a house if choice comes before duty?" Daniel met his gaze. "A house built on chains is already broken." Silence fell for a heartbeat. The words struck deep, cutting through the polished walls of tradition. Liara's breath caught. Never had anyone dared to speak so boldly in defense of her freedom. The elder raised her hand again. "Enough. The trial proceeds. Each claimant will speak. Then the council shall judge." The arguments began. Kalen spoke first, his voice like honey, but edged with steel. He painted a picture of order. Liara restored through marriage, her disgrace washed away, her name useful again to her people. He flattered the council, reminding them of the importance of unity, of keeping bloodlines strong. "Let her heart be silent," he said, "for hearts are weak. Let her duty be loud, for duty is eternal." Applause rose from several benches. Tradition was winning. Then Daniel stepped forward. His voice was steady, plain, almost too plain for the grandeur of the hall, but it carried truth. "Where I come from," he began, "we also have duty, we also have tradition. But we learned something over time. When duty crushes people, when tradition denies freedom, it doesn't make a society stronger, it makes it weaker. You think you protect your houses, but you're breaking your own children." He turned, looking not at the council, but at Liara. "She has suffered enough because of rules she never chose. You tell her to obey, but you never ask her what she wants. I'm asking. And I will keep asking because her voice matters." The words spread like fire. Some delegates frowned, others whispered urgently. A few, very few, nodded with thoughtful eyes. The council deliberated, in low voices. At last the elder with the silver crown spoke again. "Tradition demands resolution. The trial cannot end without a test of worth. Since words do not sway all hearts, we will decide through the old way, the duel of conviction." Liara gasped. "No, that trial is cruel, it is not fair." Kalen smiled thinly. "I welcome it," Daniel frowned. "What kind of duel?" The elder's voice was grave, not of weapons, of endurance. "Each of you will face the Hall of Echoes. You will walk alone into the Chamber of Illusions. There your fears, your doubts, your heart itself will be tested. The one who emerges with their spirit unbroken will be judged worthy." Daniel's jaw tightened. He had never heard of such a thing. But he looked at Liara, saw her fear, and nodded. "I'll do it." Liara reached for his hand, her voice shaking. "Daniel, the hall shows you everything you fear most. Many strong men have entered and never returned. Promise me you will not let it destroy you." He squeezed her hand gently. "I can't promise. I won't be afraid. But I promise I won't give up." The trial began. Kalen entered first. The great black doors closed behind him, sealing him inside the Hall of Echoes. The delegates waited in silence. Minutes passed, then hours. Finally, the doors opened and Kalen emerged, his face pale but his posture proud. He bowed deeply to the council. "I endured," he declared. "My conviction is unshaken." Murmurs of approval filled the hall. Then it was Daniel's turn. He stepped toward the dark doors. Liara caught his arm, her golden eyes wide with fear. "Daniel, whatever you see, remember me. Remember what is real." He smiled softly. "Always." The doors closed behind him. Darkness swallowed him whole. Inside, the Hall of Echoes came alive. Shadows stretched, voices whispered. The walls shimmered with images drawn from his own heart. He saw Earth burning, his home lost. He saw his fellow soldiers turning their backs, accusing him of betrayal. He saw Liara walking away, her golden eyes cold. "Leave her," the voices hissed. "She is not yours. You will fail her, as you failed others." His knees weakened, his chest heavy. Fear pressed down like chains. But then he remembered Liara's voice, trembling, hopeful, alive. "Remember what is real." He closed his eyes. He breathed deeply. And he spoke aloud, steady as stone. "No, I will not believe these lies. My past mistakes do not define me. My heart chooses her. That is real. That is enough." The shadows screamed and shattered. Light burst through the chamber. The whispers faded and the doors opened. The hall gasped as Daniel stepped out, his uniform torn, his face pale with exhaustion, but his eyes clear, his spirit unbroken. Liara ran forward, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did it." He gave her a tired smile. "I told you I wouldn't give up." The elder raised her hand, her voice echoing through the chamber. "The human has endured the Hall of Echoes. His conviction stands. By the judgment of the council, his claim is proven." The chamber erupted with cries, some in outrage, some in wonder. Tradition had been bent, perhaps broken. Kalen's face twisted with fury, but he could not deny the result. He stormed from the chamber, his pride shattered. Liara fell into Daniel's arms, her golden eyes shining with joy. "They cannot take me from you now. You won. You won for us." Daniel held her close, his voice soft. "No, Liara. We won. Because we chose each other." That night, as the embassy quieted and the council argued behind closed doors, Daniel and Liara stood together beneath the stars. For the first time, their bond was not just whispered in gardens or hidden in halls. It was spoken, proven, and seen by all. But beyond the embassy walls, enemies stirred. Kalen would not forget his humiliation, and the galaxy itself would not remain silent as one human and one alien bride defied centuries of tradition. The battle for love was won. The war for their future had only begun. The days after the trial were anything but peaceful. News of Daniel's victory spread through the embassy like wildfire. Some called it a miracle, others a disgrace. Delegates whispered in the halls, torn between outrage and wonder. Could it truly be possible that a human soldier, a man with no house, had stood before the Hall of Echoes and endured what many of their own had failed? But for Daniel and Liara, the whispers mattered little. They had walked through fire and shadow and had chosen each other. That bond felt stronger than the weight of any tradition. Yet the galaxy was not finished with them. One evening, as the DU Council gathered to decide whether Daniel's triumph would be honored or overturned, Liara stood with him on the embassy balcony. The city lights of the alien capital stretched far below them, glowing like a sea of stars. Her golden eyes reflected both hope and worry. They argue still. Some wish to honor the trial. Others say it is meaningless because you are not of our kind. They fear that if they accept you, everything they built will change. Daniel leaned on the railing, his voice calm. Then maybe it's time for it to change. They keep talking about strength, about honor. But what good are those things, if they crush the people they're supposed to protect? Liara's hand slipped into his. If they force me back, Daniel, I will not go. Even if it means exile. Even if it means I lose everything. He turned to her, meeting her eyes. Liara, you'll never lose everything. Not while I'm here. Her heart swelled at his words. For the first time in her life, she felt not as a noble, not as a daughter of a house, but as a woman truly seen. The council session stretched for hours. Delegates raised voices, slammed fists, and argued until the hall shook with tension. At last, the elder with the silver crown spoke, her voice cutting through the noise, the hall.